At my graduation party, my mom stood up and said, "Since I pay for your education, you owe me half of your salary forever." I thought it was a joke and laughed. But then she handed me a contract. My dad's lawyer stepped forward and said, "Actually, that's not how this works." The whole room went silent. The party was supposed to be fun, but it turned into the craziest moment of my life. I had just thanked everyone for coming and was feeling great about finishing college. Then my mom stood in the middle of the living room, holding a glass of wine, and said loudly, "Since I pay for your education, you owe me half your salary forever." I laughed because I thought she was kidding. I mean, who says that at their kid's graduation party? But she was serious. She pulled a folder out of her bag and handed it to me like she was collecting a debt. "You can laugh," she said sweetly but firmly, "but I had this contract made a while ago. It's legally binding." I opened the folder, still thinking this couldn't be real. Inside was a contract. My hands started shaking. People around me looked uncomfortable. I couldn't believe it. What kind of parent does this? Before I could even react, my dad, who had been standing quietly with his arms crossed, gestured to his lawyer. That's when everything changed. The room was so quiet I could hear someone's ice clinking in their drink. I looked at the contract again. It listed every expense she had paid for: tuition, housing, food, even gas money. And at the end, there was a line that made me feel sick. If I didn't sign, she could take legal action against me for not paying her back. I felt my stomach drop. She never said this was a loan. I'd asked her many times if she was okay paying for college, and every time she'd smile and say, "It's an investment in your future." Now she was acting like this was all planned and normal. "Mom," I said, trying to stay calm, "you never told me this was a loan." She tilted her head and pretended to be surprised. "Oh, sweetie, of course it was. You didn't think I was just giving you that money, did you?" She laughed like it was a joke and looked around for support. "You're an adult now. Adults pay their debts." I stared at her, my heart racing. Then my dad finally spoke up from the corner of the room. "Well, actually," he said, nodding at the lawyer beside him, "that's not how this works." Everyone looked at him. His lawyer, a well-dressed man with gray hair, stepped forward and held out his own folder. "Miss Carter," the lawyer said seriously, looking at my mom, "we heard about your contract a few weeks ago, and after reviewing it, I need to explain something to your son before he makes any decisions." I looked at my dad, feeling confused, but my mom was suddenly very quiet. The lawyer opened his folder and said, "First of all, you can't legally ask for payment without a signed agreement made before the tuition was paid. Since there's no contract or signed document proving this was a loan, your claim is not valid." My mom blinked. "Excuse me?" The lawyer kept going. "Second, even if this was a loan, verbal agreements between parents and children about financial help usually don't hold up in court, especially when there's clear proof the money was given without expecting repayment." I felt my heart race. Dad knew. He had seen this coming and was ready for it. My mom's face turned angry. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "I have proof. I have emails, text messages. I've read them." The lawyer cut her off smoothly. "And none of them say your son had to pay you back. In fact, there are several messages where you reassure him you're paying for everything as a parent, not as a lender." Her face went pale. My dad crossed his arms. "So," he said, "if you really want to take this to court, we can. But I don't think you'll like how that turns out." The room was so tense it felt hard to breathe. My mom opened her mouth but then shut it. She looked around and realized everyone had just seen what happened. Her friends, coworkers, our family, they all saw her try to trap me with a contract, only to be stopped immediately. I could see panic in her eyes. She thought she'd pressure me into signing out of embarrassment. She didn't expect Dad to be prepared. But she wasn't giving up. "Oh, I see how it is," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" She turned to me, smiling but clearly furious. "You think you can just take everything from me and walk away?" I shook my head. "Mom, I never took anything from you. You offered." Her face twisted with rage. "You are so ungrateful," she spat. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" She turned to the crowd, her hands shaking. "I raised this child alone. I worked 2 jobs. I sacrificed so much for him." My dad scoffed. "You had full custody and wouldn't let me help. Don't pretend you did this all by yourself." The room went completely silent. That's when it hit me. This wasn't really about money. It was about control. My mom had always used money to keep control over me, making me feel like I owed her something. Now that I was finally done with college and ready to live my own life, she was trying to trap me again. But she was losing. Her hands balled into fists. She looked at me one last time and hissed, "You'll regret this." Before I could respond, she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the party. The door slammed and suddenly my legs felt weak. My dad put a hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. I let out a shaky breath. "I don't know." He gave me a small, understanding smile. "Don't worry, this isn't over." And he was right, because my mom, she wasn't done. And the next thing she did, it was even worse. 2 weeks later, it all blew up again. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from a lawyer. At first, I thought it was junk mail. But when I saw the address, my stomach dropped. It was a demand letter from a lawyer my mom hired, saying I owed her $176,000 for all the money she spent on my education and other costs. If I didn't pay, she was going to sue me. I stared at the letter, barely able to breathe. She actually did it. She really went to a lawyer and tried to take me to court. I called my dad right away. When he saw the letter, he didn't even look surprised. "I figured she'd try something like this," he said, shaking his head. "She doesn't know when to stop." Then his lawyer stepped in. "She doesn't have a case," the lawyer told me. "But if she's serious about dragging this to court, we need to respond in a way that makes sure she never tries this again." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" The lawyer gave me a small, confident smile. "We're not just going to defend you," he said. "We're going to fight back." My dad had mostly stayed quiet during my childhood. He and my mom had a messy divorce when I was little, and she made sure I stayed away from him. She told me he didn't care about me. She said he never wanted to help and that she had to do everything alone. But that was a lie. When we started preparing our case, my dad showed me bank statements, emails, and legal documents from years ago. Proof he had sent her thousands of dollars in child support and even tried to help pay for my education. But every time she turned him down. She wanted full control over me. If he helped, she couldn't say, "I did all of this by myself." And now she was trying to force money out of me that she refused to take from my dad. When her lawsuit officially went to court, my dad's lawyer didn't just defend me. He filed a counterclaim. We sued her for fraud, emotional distress, and misusing money. During our investigation, we found something that made my blood run cold. My mom hadn't even spent all the money she claimed was for my education. Yes, she paid my tuition, but the numbers didn't add up. Over those 4 years, she had taken out extra student loans in my name, loans I never even knew about, and those loans were way more than my tuition actually cost. She had been keeping the extra money for herself. When we presented that evidence in court, everything fell apart for her. The case dragged on for months, but in the end she lost. Not only did the judge throw out her case against me, but she was also ordered to pay back all the fake loans she took out in my name. She tried to argue, she even cried, but the evidence was clear. And when the judge gave the final decision, she looked at me with pure hatred. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You betrayed me." I looked back at her, finally seeing her for who she really was. "You did this to yourself," I said. After that, she went completely off the rails. She tried calling and texting me, begging me to forgive her. When that didn't work, she started telling everyone I was a selfish, ungrateful son who had sued his own mother. She told her friends, family, even my old teachers. But the truth was out. No one believed her anymore. Her reputation was ruined. Her finances were a disaster. She tried to appeal the case, but she didn't have the money for another lawyer. And me? I walked away. I was finally free from guilt, from manipulation, from the debt trap she tried to pull me into. And for the first time, I felt like I could finally breathe. She lost everything. Not just the case, but her reputation and her money. But even after all that, she still couldn't let it go, because people like her don't stop until they've lost everything. A few months after the lawsuit, I got a call from a number I didn't know. I let it go to voicemail. When I checked the message, my stomach dropped. It was my mom. Her voice sounded shaky and desperate. "Hey, sweetie. I know things have been rough between us, but I really need to talk to you. It's important." I didn't call her back. A week later, she showed up at my job. I was working my first real job after college, finally starting to get my life together. And there she was, standing in the lobby like she had every right to be there. My stomach sank. I pulled my manager aside and explained everything. Within minutes, security escorted her out. That same night, she sent me an email with the subject, "Please read." I almost ignored it, but I was curious. The email was long, filled with guilt-tripping and emotional manipulation. She said the lawsuit had ruined her life. She lost her job because people found out what she did. She was in debt and couldn't afford her rent. And then came the real reason for the email. She wanted me to help her with money. I laughed out loud. After everything she put me through, trying to trap me in debt forever, now she wanted me to bail her out. She ended the email with, "You owe me, after everything I've done for you." But I didn't owe her anything. I ignored her email, but my dad had a better idea. We still had one last move to make. While my mom was so focused on trying to get money from me, she forgot one big thing: the fake loan she took out in my name. That was a federal crime. She was so desperate to make people believe I was the bad guy that she kept talking about the case to anyone who would listen. And someone reported her. I don't know who did it, but one day my dad called me. "She's been arrested," he said. She had lied on loan documents under my name. That's identity theft. And the government? They don't play around with that. She was charged with fraud and identity theft. And because the amount of money was so big, she was facing real jail time. I didn't go to the trial. I didn't need to. She called me again from jail, trying to make me feel bad. I let it go to voicemail. This time, I didn't even bother listening. She went to jail, not for long, but long enough to make her life even worse. She lost her house, her job, and everything she could try to control. And me? I moved on. I built a life for myself, free from her. No guilt, no manipulation, no unfair expectations. Now years later, she's just a bad memory, and I finally have what she never wanted me to have: freedom.